President Bola Tinubu has been asked to probe the air crash that killed former Chief of Army Staff, Lieutenant General Ibrahim Attahiru, and ensure that those involved in the incident are brought to book. Terror sponsors, according to retired General Ali Kefi, were behind the air crash that killed the former Nigerian Chief of Army Staff. Well, this is serious matters here at ONU TV, and I feel this is one of the things that we should look into and see how insecurity are deteriorated to what it is in Nigeria today. This is serious matters here at ONU TV. My name is Gen Ibrahim. Please do share your opinions. Drop a comment, make them simple and civil. Recall that former president or former head of state, late General Sani Abacha, had said that if terrorism exceeds 24 hours in a nation, the government has a hand in it. And so government has proved beyond reasonable. And this man was a general, so he knew what he was saying. And we have quoted him several, again and again, and nobody has come out to say that, look, what he said was actually wrong. In fact, when that crash happened, well, personally, I felt somehow about it, but then, everybody's entitled to his own opinion. You don't have to come and hate it, especially when you don't have proofs. And so that's it. Well, now that it is coming out, I felt, well, I think it's a good time to talk about it. But the question is, why did terror sponsors, get to that point where they had to take out the Chief of Army Staff? And also, we have heard times and again that there were terror sponsors, and these terror sponsors were in the government. They are people that we know, so to speak. Even though the Nigerian government has failed to name these people and prosecute them, it now looks to me like we are chasing shadows. We know the people who are sponsoring the killings of people, outside there. The army carry AK-47s. Now the terrorists carry machine guns that are, real guns, that there is no way they would have been able to afford. And that's why you have seen that there has been no arrests all the while. A whole Kuje prison was broken into. How do you explain that? How do you explain it? That's why I smile when I see or hear, our government trying to, they look into it. They are always looking into it. Look at the kidnappings that have engulfed the FCT in recent times. Many lives already lost, even since this government took over. It was as if, we were going to get to the end of terrorism when former President Muhammadu Buhari was coming in 2015. But to make, it only made matters worse, as it were, that it skyrocketed. Saw a record of about 23,000 or something killed during that period, and now several people are still losing their lives, and kidnapping on the increase and all of that. Well, former general officer commanding one GOC, one division of the Nigerian Army, Major General Danjuma Ali Kefi, retired, who made the call, claimed that the crash was linked to terror sponsors, those who are sponsoring terrorism in Nigeria. On May 21st, credit to Sarah reporters on this one, May 21st, 2021, that Ibrahim Attahiru, the Chief of Army Staff, had died in a plane crash. He died a few months after his appointment. Later, the defense headquarters Abuja stated that the crash of the Nigeria Air Force jet, which killed the Chief of Army Staff, Lieutenant General Attahiru Ibrahim, and 10 other officers, were due to bad weather. Due to bad weather. Okay, let's move on. Those who died in the aircraft with the Brigadier General Attahiru were all top officials, and majority of them were Yorubas. Majority of them were Yorubas. We have, Brigadier General Layinka, Brigadier General Kulia, Brigadier General, Amza, Major Amza, Sergeant Humar. The crew members were Flight Lieutenant T.O. Osaniyi, Flight Lieutenant A.A. Olufade, Sergeant Adeshina, and ACM Oyedepo, and several. Well, but speaking in an interview with This Day, credit to This Day, Ali Kefi decried that the crash was swept under the carpet as the full report of the crash investigation was not made known. Well, while insisting that the crash was linked to terror sponsor, he said, "Let me put it succinctly, late General Attahiru showed strong commitment to end the insurgency ravaging the northern part of the country." And so it now looks to us, or to me, that when somebody shows interest, and when you see somebody who really wants to end a bad situation in Nigeria, somehow the person is out of the way. Somehow. We are not saying anybody had a hand. We're not saying anybody had a hand in the death of the likes of President Musa Yar'Adua. Whatever the case might have been, but somehow it has almost become, a pattern that whenever somebody shows interest in changing the face of things in Nigeria, the person just fizzles out, just like that. And that's just the case of late Attahiru, Ibrahim. Ali Kefi said, Attahiru devised a strategy to end terrorism in the north, part of which was infiltrating of terror groups and the instigation of a crisis among terror leaders, which culminated in the elimination of Boko Haram leader Abubakar Shekau by a rival terror group, Islamic State of West Africa province, that's ISWAP. Part of the strategy was to also cut off the oxygen of terrorism, including funding and logistics, and to take down terror financiers, Ali Kefi had said. All these plans would have ended terrorism as far back as, back then, unfortunately, things have become worse today. During the days of Jonathan, it was just the terrorists were just in the north. Particularly in Borno State. Now, where they have taken over several local governments, I don't know why they even still have a governor in that place. Why a state of emergency had not even been declared in those parts of the country. If terrorists can successfully, breathe in several local governments of a particular state, what's a governor doing there? Why do they have leadership in that place and the federal government is not in charge of those places? But then I believe that when we want to do something, we'll do it. I believe that if we want to achieve anything, we will achieve it. If we want to kill terrorism in Nigeria today, it can be killed. It can be killed. In all sense of sincerity and humility, it can be killed. Well, let's move on. Ali Kefi, who had been billed to receive the late the army chief as GOC 1 division in Kaduna, pointed to the sudden change of time for Attahiru's trip to Kaduna. The change of aircraft, change of airport of landing, from the military airstrip to the Kaduna International Airport. He's landing in a turbulent, stormy weather and the air-shattering explosion that occurred before the crash. He also pointed to the fact that there was no crater or impact on the crash area, noting that the bodies of the passengers were flung out of the aircraft and burnt beyond recognition long before the aircraft came down. That's serious. The bodies had gotten down before the aircraft got down. A strong indication that there was an explosion inside the aircraft. There was an explosion. there was an explosion. Well, Kefi still continue. I think it's interesting. You need to listen to this and share this video with others. Let others hear and see what's really happening and why terrorism is still breathing good life in Nigeria. Kefi continued, said about 21 hours on Thursday, May 2021, I spoke on phone with the Chief of Staff to the late Chief of Army Staff regarding their impending trip to Kaduna the following day. I had earlier spoken with General Attahiru on the same issue. We ended our discussion on the note that the late Chief of Army Staff and entourage would come by flights at about 1,000 hours the following day. About 6:30 hours the following morning, I called the Chief of Staff to the late Chief of Army Staff to confirm if their wet travel plan was as we discussed the night before, as I needed to make arrangement for the mosque that the Chief of Army Staff will attend Jumat's Friday prayer. The Chief of Staff informed me that there was a change of plan. He said, after we finished speaking last night, they received a message that the late Chief of Staff was to attend a meeting either at the Honorable Minister of Defense office or the Presidential Villa at about 1,000 hours on Friday, 21st of May 2021, and that the late Chief of Staff was to attend in person and not send a representative. It is important to note that the late Chief of Staff's trip to Kaduna was part of his visit to Zaria to attend the passing out parade of the depot NA slated for Saturday, 22nd May 2021. It is worth noting that the movement of service chiefs out of station Abuja is with the prior knowledge of the Chief of Defense Staff, the Honorable Minister of Defense, and the Presidency. So why was a meeting scheduled for about the same time that the late Chief of Staff, was to have departed for or arrived Kaduna, and why the insistence that the Chief of Staff should not be represented? Well, in any case, the Chief of Staff informed me that in view of the meeting, they would depart, the flag house, that's official residence of the Chief of Army Staff, at about 15:30 after attending the meeting and also after the Jumat prayer for the airport. They expected to arrive at the airport at about 16 hours, board the aircraft at about 16:10, 16:15 hours, and depart for Kaduna. At about 16 hours, I was informed that they have arrived the presidential wing of the airport. I then set off from the Stallion House, that's my official residence, with my entourage in a convoy, and arrived the Air Force Base at about 16:15. For reasons that I cannot understand till today, the flight was delayed for over an hour and did not take off until 17:30 hours or thereabouts. The reason for the delay, as I was informed, was that there was issue with the aircraft that was initially assigned for the mission to convey the Chief of Staff to his entourage, and that it had to be changed. Ali Kefi also disclosed meantime that there was meteorological alert that Kaduna airspace was going to experience heavy rainfall, accompanied with storm, wind shear, and it was advised already. The cloud had formed in Kaduna, which was visible to us at the airport. As a matter of fact, the cloud was so thick, which was indicative of a massive storm. I began to nurse doubt about the flight. At some point, I voiced my doubt to Air Commodore Iyamu and Air Commodore Ilo, who were with me to receive the Chief of Army Staff. I even suggested that they should advise Abuja of weather condition with a view to having the flight cancelled. At that point, I was informed that the aircraft was airborne at about 17:45. I became concerned as to whether the aircraft would be able to land at the airport in such a heavy rainfall storm. The rain had started falling then. Thus, I was not surprised when Air Commodore Ilo informed me that we had to go to the Civil International Airport as the NAF runway was not long enough to enable the aircraft to land under the atrocious weather condition. We then set off for the international airport, but at a snail speed due to the heavy rainfall, which was accompanied with ice particles. I couldn't see any aircraft on the runway. I frantically looked around, and by the far side of the runway there was a fireball. It was the aircraft conveying General Attahiru. We got out of the vehicle, crossed the runway, and approached the burning aircraft. Firefighters were on hand to put out the blaze. At some point, we had to pull back due to the fear of exploding cylinders. We later recovered the corpses of 10 passengers on board the ill-fated plane, far from where the plane wreckage was. It was the aircraft conveying General Attahiru. We got out of the vehicle. Okay, sorry, I beg your pardon, I'll have to take that again. Apparently, their bodies, which were on fire, were flung from the aircraft before it came down, already in flames. Furthermore, the aircraft, or what was left of it, at least what I could recollect, was a relatively flat grassland. There was no crater. This was indicative of a mid-air explosion. So what caused the aircraft to explode? I wonder what the Air Safety and Accident Investigation Bureau report says about the incident. Ali Kefi further queried, was the flight deliberately delayed in order to be caught up in the rainstorm? Was the aircraft sabotaged? Which caused it to explode mid-air? Was the explosion caused by explosives? Was a bomb planted in the aircraft and contained in a parcel which a passenger unknowingly carried? Okay, maybe I should take a few lines more before we round up. Kefi revealed also that the most worrisome aspect was that some of the individuals involved in terrorism financing of Boko Haram terrorists, and who were also involved in procurements and movement of arms and ammunition for Boko Haram and other criminal organizations, had links with the military. It was thus apparent that terrorism and insurgency in the north and northwest and north central were criminal enterprise and were largely undertaken with profit rather than any ideology as the primary motive. Thus, we at the BOI arrived at the obvious conclusion that progress cannot be achieved except the financial collaborators, supporters, and the leadership of the terrorist and insurgent group are identified and the network dismantled. Well, I'd like to call it a wrap at this point. It's been a little bit very long video, but then I'd like you to watch again and again and again, and we should know from this revelation that our problem is not without a solution. That's the obvious truth. Our terrorism problem is not without solution. And so I'll hang my boot here, allow you to drop your comments, make them simple and civil. Unfortunately, we do not always have, when they say they do probe in Nigeria, when they say they're doing an investigation, even if we get some half-baked reports, there are no implementations of whatever the report says. That's also an unfortunate part, but then the people, Nigerians, have always been at the receiving end, at the sacrifice. They have always been sacrificial lambs. This government has come in again to say Nigerians still have to sacrifice. Well, I hope someday, very, very soon, there will be an end to this sacrifice that we have been paying, all the while. Well, this is Serious Matters here at ONIF TV. Please do share videos with others. Drop your comment, make them simple and civil. Thank you very much for watching, and don't forget to share videos with others. Bye-bye.